So there's something really not right here. And I think we're going to come to find that a lot more mistakes are made on the Israeli side. It's more about the Israelis' mistakes than the Hamas brilliance, I think we're going to come to find. Ambassador Aharoni says something's wrong. He's Israeli. He's a former official. He lives there, and he's saying clearly that Netanyahu did not was not on top of things. Now, does that mean not Netanyahu allowed this to happen, or Netanyahu just because of any number of reasons just wasn't paying attention? That I don't know at this point, but clearly people need to be asking questions at this point. No, look, Joe Biden wants to be a wartime president, and he's determined to do it because he thinks that's going to be part of his legacy. So I don't trust Joe Biden at all. And just think about this: he lies about everything. He couldn't even tell the truth the other day about seeing the picture of the babies being beheaded. Come on, I mean, he is not the president. The guy who's actually the country is Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice. That's who's running the administration. Areas that are essentially gun-free zones, which are going to be the magnet for the terrorists to attack. Like we saw with Hamas and the Israeli kibbutzes. Out of all those kibbutzes, 24 or the 25 weren't armed. The one that had a guy with a gun, the 25th one survived. The rest of them were all wiped out. So these are serious issues that I think need to be examined. And yeah.
Here to break down what he perceives is happening is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research, a New York Times bestselling author and CIA-trained intelligence operations officer with 35 years of experience in global and national security. In his think tank work, he's an advisor to senior members of the White House, intelligence community, Pentagon, key members of Congress. His time in the DoD included support to the controversial counterterrorism project known as Able Danger, a pre-9/11 offensive operation designed to detect, degrade, and counter al-Qaeda capabilities. And during his 2 successful undercover combat tours, he participated in the search for senior al-Qaeda leadership in Afghanistan. These operations provide him with a unique viewpoint on terrorism and its roots in Southwest Asia. So thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. There's so much more I could say about you. Your bio is just too dang long. I can't cover your whole bio, but
I should retire my bio and get a new one, right? So,
No, we're going to get into that as the interview goes along. But
Sure.
also, I own your book. Obviously, that Operation Dark Heart. The heavily redacted version. We'll see if we ever get one out that isn't full of black lines. But you've really served as in that whole process and talking about what you observed as a whistleblower, and talking about failures in basically things that were known that weren't said to be known, and there was no action taken. And
Right.
I'm really struck with the amount of people that are making comparisons with what's going on now, what we saw happen in this conflict with 9/11. So, what are your thoughts on those comparisons being made?
Well, I think it's deeper in parallels than people understand. One of the narratives which I think people recognize now, and I've talked about with you several times, is that our 9/11 was not an intelligence failure, it was a policy failure. The policies in place were prone to favor the terrorists and diminish the effectiveness of our intelligence community and our response. Could that have happened here with Hamas? And I think so. I was actually, I do a radio show, The Hard Truth, and I was interviewing Ambassador Ido Aroni, who was the consul general from I think 2010 to 2014 for the Israelis, and he said, I didn't say it, he said that Netanyahu will forever go down as the guy who oversaw the failure of intelligence relating to the Hamas attack. Now, most people right now are cheering his leadership and saying what a great job he's doing. But here, as a guy I find completely credible, former ambassador, there living near Gaza, telling me that there's some intelligence failures here that may go right back up to the top guy in charge. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds, because to your point, I think the narrative here is parallels 9/11. It does in scope, it does in consequence to the national security of the Israelis versus what we did. But it does, I think, eerily look at that there were some really bad policies which essentially opened the door for Hamas not to be detected. And let's revisit that one second. The first day of the attack, 5,000 missiles were fired. That's a lot of missiles were fired from the West Bank into the Israeli territory. That's a lot. These things aren't pocket size. These things are big. They had to be smuggled in. Uh, for the paragliders, again, there was a squadron of these things. You could see it. You can see videos of these things coming out of the morning sun like Apocalypse Now to attack that concert. So how did you not see that at all? And again, the last thing is breaching operations. If you look at the maps out there, there's a lot of them out there where Hamas breached the wall. And you had to have bulldozers and people to do that. And somehow that wasn't
I
detected.
mean, I think that the other parallel here is, we see a lot of unanswered questions about how this could happen when we have not only the supposedly top of the line Israel intelligence, but like our own, and we just
Yeah,
didn't see some of this that looks so rudimentary. And then on top of that, when these news stories are coming out that are so playing on our fear and our emotion, I mean, we saw that in 9/11 too. Like all of
yeah.
these things that came out of just playing on people's emotions. But I wanted to show a really quick video of an ex IDF commander who is speaking to that. He says that it's impossible that they didn't know about this. So let's watch this real quick and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Sure.
טוב, תקשיבו, אני הייתי מפקד בגולני ויודע מה זה לעשות סיורים, וגם שימשתי תקופה כמנהל של מחלקה, ואני אומר לכם, מה שקרה פה זה נעשה בשיתוף פעולה מוחלט. אין מצב שצה"ל, אין מצב שהשב"כ, קודם כל מודיעינית, לא ידעו על זה. אין מצב שצה"ל לא ישר הגיב, לא חיל אוויר, לא טנקים, לא, פעם היה לנו חדירה, חשש לחדירה מהרצועה, אני זוכר, אני הייתי בנחל עוז, תוך שניות הגיעו מאות רכבים מכל הצדדים, לא יכול להיות שדבר כזה קרה בלי ידיעת צה"ל. אני רוצה להגיד לכם משהו, ותקשיבו טוב, המדינה בגדה בנו עוד בקורונה עם הזריקות הקטלניות, אבל עכשיו אתם רואים את זה יותר בבירור, מכרו אותנו, המדינה הזאת היא כבר לא שלנו, הצבא לא משרת אותנו, אני יודע שזה נשמע קשה, ואני יודע שזה מפחיד, אבל זו האמת, ואני מבטיח לתת לכם.
Really enlightening what he had to say about bringing in the COVID-19 deception, because that is another thing, with 9/11, as you know, it ushered in the Patriot Act and it ushered in more control. And
Right.
then we have this
Yeah.
situation, which is again playing on emotions. It's impossible not to look at these videos and get outraged and upset and so heartbroken with some of these videos. But then you have to wonder, like, well, what's true, what's not. But it sounds like he's alluding, as an ex IDF commander, that this was possibly allowed to happen so for a bigger agenda. I mean, is that too big of a accusation to throw
Well,
out there?
there's something very wrong, and at the time we're talking right now, John Kirby was asked about this, about the U.S. intelligence folks relating to why didn't we see this? We've got great intelligence. As a matter of fact, I know we do. We've got a huge amount of intelligence resources invested in monitoring Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranians, all this stuff. And he bristled. He got upset by the fact that there was, well, how can you question us? Well, that tells me there's something there. And John Kirby, for God's sake, would sell. If John Kirby saw benefit of giving his mother to the Hamas to hold as a hostage, he'd do it. I mean, he has no ethics. So when you see him questioning this, there's something wrong. And yeah, look, we need to look deeply at the COVID issue to see how whole governments compromise the integrity of not only the medical community, but of the issues relating to enforcement of laws, because they tried to treat uh, the COVID lie. Let's admit it was a lie, and they used the huge power of government, both through information and information dominance, and essentially trying to to create a net narrative that people had to follow. And if you didn't follow, it's disinformation. And then using law enforcement or other enforcement mechanisms to basically force you to do it, or you can't go to work. So there's all these things that governments did do, which we know now was completely false. So yeah, you got to question everything.